Can you imagine peeking into the most remote past of our planet? Today, we're diving into the captivating world of amber, a material as fascinating as it is beautiful. Far more than just a jewel, amber is a true time capsule, a fossilized resin capable of preserving fragments of history in a way so incredible it almost feels like magic. Think of insects, plants, and other secrets frozen in time, as if someone pressed pause millions of years ago. While we're still far from recreating prehistoric theme parks like Jurassic Park, the discoveries hidden within amber never fail to amaze. This natural treasure comes from the resins of ancient trees that thrived millions of years ago. Particularly rich deposits have been found in regions like the Baltic, the Dominican Republic, and Myanmar. So, what makes amber so extraordinary? Stick with us and find out. Let's start with one of the most remarkable amber fossils ever discovered, a partially preserved prehistoric gecko. This fascinating lizard was found in Russia within an amber deposit dating back between 54 and 34 million years ago during the Eocene epoch. Although only the front portion of its body is preserved, the fossil includes the entire head and much of its right front limb, except for the very tips of the toes. Measuring just 15 millimeters in length, this tiny gecko was incredibly small, a logical outcome, as larger animals are usually able to escape resin before becoming trapped. It's unclear whether the specimen was fully grown when it met its sticky fate, but this discovery was significant enough to establish a new species named Dinosaur Gecko balticus. Thanks to the incredible preservation properties of amber, scientists can observe exquisite details of this little reptile's anatomy. Its body is covered with minute scales, and like modern geckos, it lacked movable eyelids. Its toes were asymmetrical, with the first and second being noticeably smaller and thinner than the others. Remarkably, the fossil also reveals that Dinosaur Gecko balticus had the same adhesive system found in today's geckos, allowing it to climb vertical surfaces with ease. This system features broad toe pads and plate-like structures at the tips of the digits, which, in modern geckos, house microscopic hair-like filaments. These filaments utilize van der Waals forces to adhere to surfaces, making geckos unparalleled climbers. Given its anatomical design, Dinosaur Gecko balticus likely lived in trees, moving among branches with its sticky toes. This arboreal lifestyle also explains how it ended up trapped in tree resin millions of years ago. The discovery of this fossil demonstrates that climbing adaptations had already evolved in geckos at least 54 million years ago, highlighting just how ancient and successful these traits have been in the evolutionary history of these remarkable reptiles. Dinosaur Gecko balticus doesn't just tell the story of its species, it also offers a glimpse into how Earth's climate has changed over millions of years. During the early Eocene, when this tiny reptile lived, the planet was a greenhouse world with no permanent ice caps. At that time, geckos had a much broader distribution, inhabiting higher latitudes, such as northwest Russia, where this fossil was discovered. These regions, now characterized by cold climates, were once dominated by lush tropical and warm-temperate ecosystems, vastly different from today's frozen landscapes. Our second fossil is nothing short of extraordinary. A dinosaur tail preserved in amber, dating back approximately 99 million years to the Cretaceous period. This remarkable find, discovered in Myanmar's amber deposits, is covered in feathers, providing undeniable evidence that many dinosaurs were feathered. The tail measures about 37 millimeters and likely belonged to a juvenile dinosaur from the Maniraptora family, a group that includes iconic dinosaurs such as velociraptors, oviraptorosaurs, and ornithomimosaurs. Although scientists can't identify the exact species, they've ruled out the possibility that it was a bird tail, as it contains far more vertebrae than any known prehistoric bird. Interestingly, the feathers on this tail weren't designed for flight. Their structure suggests they were ornamental, possibly used for display purposes or to help the young dinosaur stay warm. These feathers wouldn't have enabled the dinosaur to fly, offering insights into how feathered dinosaurs began developing more complex plumages with diverse functions over time. The feathers themselves are preserved with astonishing clarity. Individual filaments are visible, allowing scientists to analyze their structure in remarkable detail. Unlike many modern feathers, these lack a well-defined central shaft, known as a rachis. This suggests that the smaller branching components of feathers, barbs, and barbules evolved earlier than the central shaft. This discovery is pivotal in understanding how modern feathers evolved. Amazingly, traces of color have been detected in the feathers on this tail. Through the amber, scientists have observed that some feathers were significantly darker than others. Analyses indicate that this dinosaur likely had a plumage featuring chestnut brown on the upper side of the tail, while the underside was lighter, possibly almost white. This combination of colors is known as countershading, a camouflage strategy that helps animals blur their outlines, making them harder to spot by both predators and prey. Countershading remains common in modern animals, such as deer and birds, illustrating how this evolutionary strategy has stood the test of time. In addition to feathers, scientists have found traces of muscles, ligaments, and skin fragments attached to the bones of the dinosaur's tail. Remarkably, they also detected possible remnants of ancient proteins like hemoglobin, which carries oxygen, and ferritin, which stores iron. While these molecules have degraded over time, it is astonishing to think that traces of proteins from a dinosaur that lived almost 100 million years ago have been preserved. It is believed that the tail may have begun to decompose and dry out before it became trapped in tree resin. It's possible that the dinosaur had already died when its tail was encapsulated. Another hypothesis suggests that the small dinosaur became trapped while still alive, but couldn't escape due to its size. Unlike some modern lizards, this dinosaur wouldn't have been able to shed its tail to escape, likely leading to its demise. Imagine this as a plot for a future Jurassic Park movie. Instead of extracting dinosaur DNA from an insect trapped in amber, scientists accidentally extract bacteria from the bubonic plague. While it sounds like science fiction, it's not too far from reality. In 2015, a paleontologist described a 20-million-year-old flea fossil trapped in amber that appears to contain just such bacteria. This incredible fossil, found in the Dominican Republic's amber deposits, preserves an extinct species of flea that is not closely related to most modern fleas. Flea fossils are extremely rare, so the discovery itself was already exciting for scientists. But upon closer examination, they realized something even more surprising: tiny microorganisms attached to the flea. Upon studying the fossil's rectum, researchers found clusters of bacteria that closely resembled Yersinia pestis, the bacteria responsible for the bubonic plague. Although it can't be definitively stated that these bacteria are Yersinia pestis, they exhibit the right characteristics and are in the correct location, as modern fleas also carry these bacteria in their rectum. Additionally, the scientists found a dried drop at the end of the flea's mouth that contained more bacteria, suggesting that the mechanism of transmission could have been similar to that of modern plague-carrying fleas. The discovery of plague bacteria in a flea fossil at least 20 million years old is remarkable. Genetic studies have shown that the strains of Yersinia pestis that infect humans likely evolved between 20,000 and 10,000 years ago, long after this fossil was trapped in amber. This suggests that if the bacteria in this fossil are indeed Yersinia, they likely represent an extinct strain that initially evolved as a rodent parasite, long before humans existed. In fact, other amber specimens from the Dominican Republic have preserved hairs from prehistoric rodents, making them likely candidates to have hosted this extinct flea species and its associated bacteria. Although this discovery opens a fascinating window into the past, the paleontologist who described the fossil remains cautious about making definitive claims. It is still unclear whether the bacteria were parasites of vertebrates, such as rodents, and were transmitted by the flea, or if they were merely symbiotic bacteria living inside the insect without affecting larger animals. However, the fact that bacteria were also found in the flea's mouth suggests they might have been transmitted to the host the insect bit to feed. If this is the case, the fossil could provide a crucial clue as to how this devastating pathogen evolved, which centuries later would be responsible for the Black Death, a pandemic that wiped out nearly half of Europe's population during the 14th century. Let's move on to another amber specimen that preserves the head, neck, legs, and one wing of a dinosaur. Well, technically a prehistoric bird. However, this is a very ancient species living around 99 million years ago and was found in an amber deposit in Myanmar, just like the dinosaur tail fossil previously described. Encased in a piece of amber 8.6 centimeters long, the partial body of a tiny prehistoric chick is preserved. The right leg is particularly impressive, as it is near the edge of the amber, showing an astonishing level of detail, from the small-scale patterns on the toes to the fine feather-like filaments between them and the tiny claws. The partial wing and some feathers are also preserved, though they are harder to observe because they are in the center of the amber, which makes them difficult to see. Additionally, the neck and head are visible, where the external ear opening and the large prominent eyes can be seen, although the eyelids appear almost completely closed, leaving only a small slit open. Through scans of the specimen, researchers were able to see the bones beneath the soft tissues encased in amber, revealing more details of the body parts preserved in this natural tomb. This fossil belongs to an ancient line of birds called Enantiorniths, a completely extinct group that disappeared along with the other non-avian dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous period, 66 million years ago, following the impact of the famous asteroid. While the Enantiorniths were similar to many modern birds, they still had teeth in their beaks and claws on their wings, features that set them apart from today's birds. This particular chick appears to have been a newborn, likely having hatched just days or weeks before its death. What is surprising, however, is that its wing feathers were already fully developed and capable of flight, supporting the hypothesis that the Enantiorniths were very precocial animals, possibly capable of flying immediately after birth. The feathers of this prehistoric chick capture a frozen moment in its developmental process. Some of the first feathers are beginning to emerge from the follicles on the neck and head, while the legs and belly have very sparse plumage. This fossil has helped scientists better understand the pace and sequence of feather growth in these ancient birds. Incredibly, traces of color have also been preserved in the feathers. The tones range from dark browns, light browns, grays, and whites, a color pattern typical of young birds that would have helped them camouflage and protect themselves from predators. The body of this chick likely became trapped in sticky resin, becoming partially embedded. The exposed parts of the body were probably scavenged and torn off by other animals before more resin flows covered the rest of the body, fully encapsulating it and creating this window into the past. Among the most controversial amber fossils, we find a discovery announced in 2020 that shook the world of paleontology. Scientists revealed what seemed to be the holy grail of dinosaur fossils, a tiny dinosaur head perfectly preserved in 99-million-year-old amber from Myanmar. This supposed dinosaur, about the size of a hummingbird, was named Oculudentavis congrai. Based on its anatomy, it was initially concluded to be a species of very primitive bird, even older than the enantiorniths we just discussed. With a skull measuring just 173 centimeters in length, this creature was presented as the smallest known dinosaur of the Mesozoic, almost as small as the bee hummingbird, the tiniest bird in the world today. Although initially celebrated as a historic find, the announcement of Oculudentavis quickly raised doubts. Many paleontologists began to question the identification of this fossil as a bird. Some noted suspicious similarities between its anatomy and that of certain lizards, suggesting that the paleontologists had made an identification error. However, this wasn't the only issue. The media attention that Oculudentavis received also reignited an ethical debate about the use of amber fossils from Myanmar. The amber deposits in Kachin State in the northern part of the country have been an invaluable source of prehistoric fossils, like the Dinosaur Tail, the baby bird, and the Oculudentavis itself. But the exploitation of these fossils is tied to serious humanitarian and ethical issues. Since 2017, the region has been under the control of Myanmar's military, and there have been reports that the sale of amber has helped fund the conflict in Kachin State. Moreover, the conditions in the mines are extremely dangerous, with reports of child labor and labor exploitation. In response, the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology issued a statement in 2020 discouraging the purchase and study of amber fossils obtained after June 2017. In 2021, following a military coup and the outbreak of civil war in Myanmar, the organization recommended a temporary ban on the publication of studies on amber fossils obtained after January 2021. Although these measures aim to prevent complicity in violence and exploitation, some paleontologists argue that banning the study of these fossils could lead to their destruction. Many specimens end up being carved into jewelry, forever lost to the scientific record. Beyond the ethical controversies, the fossil itself became the subject of intense scientific debate. In 2021, a second, more complete specimen was studied by a different team of paleontologists, confirming that Oculudentavis was not a bird but a lizard. This second specimen included additional parts such as the neck, part of the body, and soft tissues like scales. Although its skull had strangely bird-like proportions, with an elongated snout and large eyes, a more detailed analysis of its anatomy clearly revealed that it was a lizard. This second fossil was classified as a new species, Oculudentavis naga. Despite the initial confusion, Oculudentavis remains a fascinating fossil, as it shows how a lizard might have evolved bird-like anatomical features through evolutionary convergence. It likely lived in trees, using its large eyes and elongated snout to detect and catch small, fast insects. Prehistoric animals trapped in amber are undoubtedly among the most astounding things we can find. These tiny time capsules offer a direct glimpse into a world that existed millions of years ago. With discoveries as incredible as the ones we've already seen, it doesn't seem so far-fetched to imagine that one day we could come across something as spectacular as a perfectly preserved, non-avian dinosaur head in amber. It would be epic. Imagine everything we could learn about how these creatures looked and lived.